I'm batting cleanup here, so we're going to kind of run through a project that I think many of you probably know the history of better than I do, but want to give you an update on what's going on. That's kind of what it looks like right now today. I thought what we'd kind of talk a little bit about of where we've been, where we are right now, and where we're going. First of all, I want to say thank you to the board of directors, many of whom are here today. Would everybody who's on the board please put their hand up so we can kind of recognize you? I mean, it's a great group, and as you probably know, you can't serve on the board of Encore Park unless you are either a current or former elder, or you have been a member in good standing for 2 years, and I'm just delighted to work with this group of people. We have been on a journey together over the last couple of years, going through a pandemic. Preceding all of us, though, except maybe for one or two people, I think maybe Joe was on the original board, but in 2011, the church made the decision to acquire the property at 504, 508, and 514 Park Avenue. And at the time, it was really driven by a desire from the Stewpot to expand its services. And so if you looked at a lot of what the Stewpot was, the reason why the church was doing all of this, it was around an expansion of services. And Bruce Buchanan was a big proponent of that. And this is what it looked like. So if you think about this, if you all hadn't acquired this property, this is what you would be looking at every day as you walked around. And this is what it looked like behind the building where the community garden is. And so as a result of all of that, there was discussion about what should be done with this property. And it was divided into basically a number of parts, which is to basically take down the 504 building that was there, the Film Exchange, and turn that into an amphitheater. Then the 514 property was demolished and made into a community garden. And so now what we're really left with here is the 508 building. And by 2016, this is what you all had. It looked so much better than it used to. The amphitheater operated under a TCO for several years. It's a temporary certificate of occupancy. In 2016, you also had the community garden, which has been working quite well, and you can see some of the harvests that were going on. All of this is, of course, pre-COVID, because during COVID, we had to shut that down for a while. But that basically left this 508 building. And the 508 building is particularly important from a historical standpoint for a number of reasons. First of all, in 1929, it was built as the Warner Brothers Film Exchange. So if you were a movie theater owner, you had to come and you were going to show a movie from Warner Brothers, you had to come pick up your movie here. There was even a little screening room up on the 4th floor, which is actually pretty cool. The building, obviously, from a historical standpoint, is also important because it was zigzag modern, and there's not a lot of zigzag modern buildings still left anymore. But from a musical standpoint, Warner Brothers ended up buying up 2 record companies, Vocali and Brunswick Records. And for about a 8-year period, there was a huge number of recording artists who came through there. You had Bob Wills, you had the Light Crust Doughboys, you had Lolo Cavallis, but the most famous of those individuals was a blues artist who, quite frankly, wasn't really well known until the 60s, when a whole lot of British rock people kind of rediscovered, and a lot of blues musicians rediscovered Robert Johnson. And Robert Johnson only did 2 sets of recordings, and his last recordings were done here inside of Encore Park on the 3rd floor. Now, in 2016, September, and I know that you all know that the church went through some leadership transitions between your pastor leaving and then also having Bruce Buchanan step down at the same time. But coincidentally, you all also managed to secure, the Encore Park board, about a $2.1 million grant from the Moody Foundation. And they gave you a couple of years in order to fulfill it. And it was a challenge grant, which basically means that they would give you the money once you had raised all the rest of the money. And just so you know in numbers, the project right now for the renovation of 508 stands at about $6.7 million. I'll talk a little bit about where we are and all of that later. But what I want to tell you is during those years, between 2016 and as the church was going through a variety of different leadership changes with interim pastors, et cetera, the organization, I would say maybe some of the mission plan for it started to get a little bit stale, maybe wasn't as relevant to some of the things that were going on around the church. And so the board of directors, when I was brought in December of 2019, started, and Amos had come in, I think probably 6 months before. It was time for us to go in and look at the building and try and figure out, did the mission statement, did the vision statement, did all the goals fit? So during the early part of 2020, we worked to come up with a mission statement. And as you can see, the mission statement really, and I put in blue, I think, what are the key parts, which is gathering people in downtown Dallas to make connections between neighbors and communities. It's to redevelop the historic buildings. It's to foster social cohesion and community engagement by creating space where everybody is welcome. It's increasing collaboration among community-based organizations, increasing employment opportunities for those experiencing and those at risk of homelessness in Dallas, and then celebrating and honoring the musical legacy of the 20th century musicians who recorded in there. And our vision statement, and really where I would say, keep in mind that this has been going on since 2011, and as we look to the future, and you've also been hearing from people who are in the process of doing developments, as time goes, the needs change. And so really the key of all of this is creating a thriving, multidimensional social impact campus, which brings together all sorts of different aspects. These are basically the goals. We want to transform the 508 Park Avenue building and campus, and we really want it to help bring people together and foster the social cohesion. We've already built the community garden and the recording studios to come. And then the outdoor amphitheater is already done. And we want to create a venue that really attracts live music. And then we, of course, want to enhance the lives of the homeless that we're serving through the Stewpot. So when you really think about all of this, the major theme is bringing people together through the sharing of music, food, and service to others. And there's other elements of that I will touch on. But as we got through all of this, and we got through adopting all of this in March of 2020, we were ready to launch the capital campaign to go off and raise about another $3.8 million to finish off the campaign. And all of a sudden, COVID comes. Can't do tours. All the donors basically start going, we're trying to keep the organizations alive and operating that are right now on the ropes. I know that the Stewpot had more demand. North Texas Food Bank, it was very, very understandable, but it wasn't ideal timing from our standpoint because obviously we're trying to meet the Moody Foundation grant. So we started using that time, since we couldn't be doing the capital cam fundraising at that time, to really visit with a lot of potential partners. And so we went off and visited with all of these various different partners who we thought could be partners with us in making Encore Park come alive. Now I'm going to start a little bit backwards in that what I want to do is talk about service to others. Because when we talk about service to others, the first of those is going to be the spiritual outreach and growth. Obviously, this is a church, and we want to be able to bring people closer to God and to Christ. And that's part of the mission of why everybody is here. We also want to do that through music and art. We want to try and help people with horticulture therapy. We want to provide economic opportunities. I mean, one of the points of trying to help people who are homeless is to help them get past that difficult period and then hopefully find a pathway to economic independence. And that's part of what we want to try and do. We also would like to try and help with the culinary and hospitality job and skills training. We believe that's something that we can do. The racial diversity, equity, and inclusion programming and justice. And then also providing low cost meeting and gathering space for lots of different folks. And then through the educational learning piece and lifetime learning, we're hoping to be able to use a lot of those same opportunities to provide educational opportunities and learning opportunities that go on in the building. Obviously, our first two partners in all of this have been the church and the Stewpot. And one of the first things that's going to happen in that building, and it was part of the original plan and it will be happening when we go in, is to provide a place where all of the artwork that the artists who are doing the Stewpot's art program can actually sell their work. Patrick, we're really thankful to your partnership over at Lighthouse, because from what I understand, we're getting a chance to put some of the Stewpot's paintings over there, and I hear it's generating about $1,000 a week in sales. So if you think about it, the one thing that we've decided to do is, rather than sequestering that artwork to one little art gallery, because right now, the only time you get to see the art is if you go to Soups On or go over to Lighthouse. There's not that many opportunities. Is to year-round be able to put up the artwork and have little price tags so that it could be sold. And so if you're selling $1,000 a week, think about what would happen if you had all of that artwork all throughout the building all the time. In the service to others, one of the most exciting pieces of this is the idea that there's going to be a new worship community. And it's going to be incubated over in Byrd Hall, as you probably know. One of the things I'm sure you saw in all the slides, and if you didn't get it, I'm going to put this in big, bright lights. The area that the church is surrounded by is going to get younger, more diverse, and more affluent. And those individuals are probably going to be looking for a place of worship. And the hope is that they're going to find their way over here to First Presbyterian Church of Dallas, and that through a new worship community, we can actually use space like this that maybe is a little bit edgier, a little cooler. I mean, something that's going to be more attractive to that different kind of demographic. And so this is the second floor of what the building looks like in 508. You probably notice that Zach Light Wells and you're going to see Joe Alexander in both of these because in some of these photographs, because they were with me at the day I was taking all the photographs. But this is all the second floor, and this will be where the new worship community goes. And then when the worship community is not meeting, which would probably be all the time except for Sunday mornings, you're going to have flexible space that the whole community can use. We're already using the space over there. We did Coco's funeral. You may have heard about the woman who was shot over on Park Avenue. And just about a week or so ago, we did the service out there. And I think that was particularly meaningful to all of the Stewpot's clients and the staff that were working with Coco and the family. One of the really key parts of all of this is music. These are all the particular partners that we're looking at. First, obviously, First Presbyterian Church of Dallas is going to play a big role in that. You've already heard about the new worship community, but the other part of it is whoever is the music director would have discretionary opportunity to put in programming in there. And All Stars Project is an organization that was originally incubated here. And they do performance training and performances and leadership training with youth. Started in New York City, and they've got a very big operation here in Dallas, and they're going to be growing it. Dallas Street Choir, which works very closely with the Stewpot, and then Verdigris Ensemble, which I'm the chair-elect of TACA, and I can tell you that Verdigris Ensemble is considered to be probably the most up-and-coming and perhaps best choir in Dallas. And so they are extremely interested in working with us, and I think they're going to be doing some work here already with the church and using some of the space, and then, again, transitioning on over. The venues that are available, you could do live performances and events, up to 200 out in the amphitheater. The first floor would lend itself nicely for intimate performances. Think about going to a coffee house or little place that could hold like 20 to 50 people and be able to do performances. A second floor we've already talked about. And then the third floor will have a recording studio, rehearsal space, and flexible event space. And on the top, the events, and by the way, there's of course the amphitheater, which will be great for live performances. This is the current floor plan. This will probably stay pretty close to this. The studio would be down the end with a sound engineering room. If you're up on the third floor, this is what it looks like when you get off on the elevator. And then you can see there's really got lots of nice windows all throughout there. And then if you get all the way down here, and I'm going to show you at the very end, that was actually where we believe that Robert Johnson and everybody did their recordings. And Joe tells me, I've never actually seen it, but underneath all of this, when it was a recording studio, all of the people who recorded in there actually signed that pillar. So we have a pretty cool little deal. It's going to be kind of like a little time capsule we'll get to open when it reopens. And then this is what you're hoping to have in there. And there's been a lot of interest by all of the groups we've talked to about using that space. Food is going to be an important part of it. And one of the things that's really important to us is to use the food and the catering and all of this as an opportunity for economic opportunities, living wage, thinking about ways to train people up and into other opportunities and jobs. There's been some really neat stuff that's going on right now with ghost kitchens, which is allowing small entrepreneurial cooks and chefs to be able to have their restaurant and get a start, but without having to invest in a permanent facility. And that's kind of what some of these organizations do with like Break Bread, Break Borders, Bonton Farms, and Full City Rooster is a coffee supplier who's willing to do that same kind of work as well. And you have all of these different venues where food can be served from the rooftop to the community garden, and of course the amphitheater. Right now, the community garden is a great opportunity, and some of our partners have been very excited about having that outside. One of the things that would have been really helpful during COVID is we actually could have used this for outdoor dining space if Encore Park had been open at that point. I'm going to go through. So one of the things to think about is if we're going to do performances, you really need to be able to offer, refreshments and food services for that. And so these are the doors that would go actually out into the amphitheater. And so this is going to, on the first floor, be largely welcome area, and it's going to be a gathering spot for people who are doing, various different performances. And that's the rooftop. So if you haven't been up on the rooftop, this is what it looks like up there. Lots of very cool features. One of them being that because this was the Film Exchange Center, and those films in those days were so flammable, this is actually part of the venting system that went all the way from the first floor. And so that's kind of a neat little aspect of it. This is probably going to be on every Instagram photograph. Anybody who ever goes up there always wants their photograph taken next to the Warner Brothers pictures. And then you've got this phenomenal view off the balcony, overlooking the Stewpot. So this is actually where the little screening room is. So I'm kind of looking from the Masonic Lodge blockhouse towards the Stewpot. And what I want to show you is this is what we're kind of thinking it would look like. And if you think about the weddings that you do here in the church, now you would have a fabulous place for somebody to be able to go over and do their reception right next door. And you think about all the different ways this space can be used. And part of what enables all of this is that you've got this giant parking garage right next to all of this, which allows you, a lot of days, I come here a lot, and this building and that parking lot sits empty for the most part, except for when you all have a specific program, and I guess Sunday mornings. And you think about what an opportunity that is with all the growth that we've got going on around us with these various different projects. And that is something that, quite frankly, most places don't have, is kind of instant parking. Now, you may ask why on earth I would show you the Great Seal of the United States. Well, it's real easy. You see this little expression here, and it's on every piece of currency. It's on a part of it says e pluribus unum. Well, over the last couple of years, I think one of the things that we've seen is just how divided our country is in so many different ways. It doesn't make any difference whether we're talking about race. It doesn't make any difference when we're talking about politics. We're going to talk about faith. There is a lot of division, and I would say it's been there for a long time, but it feels much more intense right now at this moment. Having a facility like this gives you all an opportunity to really address the e pluribus unum that we say as Americans is really critical to us. And what e pluribus unum means is out of many one. And it was all about that we are all coming from different perspectives. We're coming from different points in our life, but what brings us together is that we're Americans. Okay? And we're one community here. And I think this is one of the really special things that you've got here. It is a hidden jewel, and it is something that the church is eminently qualified to be helping with. As we did crucial conversations last year, we could do a lot of programming in that particular space. And this space can come alive very quickly. We've made a lot of progress towards it. We've raised about almost $1 million this year. We still need to raise about $2.8 million before the end of the year. We've got a lot of proposals out there. But unless we raise this money, it's going to sit like this. And so part of what I want to say to you is we've got till December 31st of the end of this year to meet that Moody challenge. It has been extended multiple times. We can do this. We need to get this funded. This is important, and we can make this into a very, very special place, not just for the church, not just for this part of downtown, but for Dallas as general, and quite frankly, for our state. So that's all I have. We really appreciate you all being here, and we are happy to take any questions that you want. And so what I would ask is, ask your question. We're going to repeat the question so that we can get it on there for the record. Yes, Dick. I think that's Dick. Yes.
Two things with respect to Park Avenue and everything that's planned. With respect to funding, I'm retired now. My former employer will generally match charitable contributions that I make unless there is a religious connection.
Right.
So, with respect to the funding, would that money go into a separate 501c3 operation? That's
Great question.
And then the second part is the optics of just looking down Park Avenue with trash and people sleeping on the sidewalk is, that's something that we're here to deal with. But how are we going to reconcile that with the wedding receptions and other, the coffee shops and things that
Yeah.
we're talking about at 508?
So the question for those who are watching the live stream was about if there was a religious component to the organization, would a company match that contribution? And then the second question was about Park Avenue and the condition and the people and the trash that are there right now, and given what we're hoping is going to happen with the facility. Great questions in both cases. So it's an easy one on the first one. The easy one is Encore Park was set up by this church as an independent 501c3 organization. And as you can kind of see in our mission, we don't make a lot of reference to the church. And it's not that, how would I put it, that was certainly discussed as a part of it, but I think what we're doing is we're using the spiritual aspects of the church, but we are talking about it in a little bit different way, because a lot of what's going to go on in there is not going to be about necessarily faith, but it's going to be about, loving our neighbor. It's going to be about, the human aspects of all of that. You would not have any problem, I do not believe, because, for example, our family's foundation will not make a grant to an individual church. They will give to the community ministries. And so if Stewpot was an independent 501c3 organization, it would be very similar to what we're looking at with Encore Park. The Park Avenue piece is challenging, and but I would say part of that is also because, and I think it's gotten much worse because of COVID. When you didn't have a lot of activity going on Park Avenue, 515, which the church just acquired, has been sitting there vacant for a long time. The community garden was shut down for a while. 508 has not been opened. It is an abandoned building. And, the amphitheater has not been operational for a couple of years. We are working very hard to address that because we've got to get a certificate of occupancy. And quite frankly, it kind of all relates back to the fact that there is this wonderful little piece that sticks out into the city's thoroughfare. And so we're having to go through the cities. So I have the same love for the city that the rest of our speakers do but we are, in the past, perhaps that had not been addressed. It had been ignored, and that did not make for very happy City of Dallas employees. So we have been doing everything. Actually, Kyle Strasser and I have been doing great deals of sucking up to the City of Dallas in order to try and move this along as quickly as we can. And there is nobody in this church, including Amos, who wants to see that amphitheater opened up any faster. But I think once you start to see a lot of activity, I think that's going to change it. And I think it's also, we're going to have to give some very serious conversations to how we work through that with our partners. And one of them here is DDI, who spends a lot of time working with the homeless who aren't necessarily clients of the Stewpot. And so that's something that we're going to have to address. I mean, I should ask, Brenda, do you want to say anything else, or anybody else from the board, or Ashley? Yeah, use the microphone, please.
All right, so staff has actually been looking at we called it the perimeter issue. And it's not actually only on Park Avenue, but especially after church on Sundays, a lot of people find sanctuary on the Harwood and Jackson side of the street as well. And so Dustin actually got an email from me about this week, trying to look at the DDI model and evaluate kind of their expertise as it relates to outreach in downtown on the street, as well as the cleanliness factor. A proposal went to the senior leadership team for consideration as we're in the budget season for how to recognize the perimeter of the campus as an extension of the sanctuary. So the people that are living or resting on the outside are attracted to this campus for a reason. They find sanctuary there. They find peace, some sort of comfort. Maybe it's in the shade. Maybe it's because of the artwork, the stained glass windows. Maybe it's because of the outreach efforts of the Stewpot. But trying to recognize that the sanctuary that they're seeking is very similar to the sanctuary and the worship experience that we get in here. And so how do we reach them in a way that extends dignity and respect, but also maintains and creates expectations that we would have for any of our members of our community? So that would include not sleeping in public, but balancing that response with appropriate outreach through partnerships with like DDI, looking at their street outreach model, leveraging assets that we already have through Brenda's staff, to make sure that we're not just saying move along, but instead we are addressing some of the, at times, extensive issues or trauma that has brought someone to seek sanctuary on the perimeter of our campus. We kind of first went through that, and Bill is here, with the nuisance abatement back in 2018, kind of those quality of life issues. And then we really began to resolve itself, but then picked back up in the pandemic as social distancing limited some shelter capacity around the area. Michael is not wrong. Not all of the folks who find sanctuary on the perimeter of our campus are clients of the Stewpot, but some are. But they all are people with names, with stories that are attracted to this campus for a reason. And so I think the balancing act that we have is to continue to meet the standard that we have set and those before us have set for ourselves, and how to respond to those who are attracted to this campus, whether they're coming into the sanctuary to receive services or whether they are simply going to sit in the shade. So what the senior leadership team has been considering is some perimeter clean team. We called them dignity enhancements. If somebody was going to be sitting on the side of the campus, we want to make sure there's not trash. How do we increase access to restrooms? What kind of partnerships would allow us to invite more people in to access the restrooms? having conversations with folks, recognizing the person there, saying hello, increasing and fostering those relationships that create respect or mutual respect, as well as foster an element of being able to ask them what's going on in their life and how we get them into shelter, appropriate shelter, recognizing that sleeping on the perimeter is not safe. In fact, my son who's here today, just last week told me he thought that the people sleeping on the perimeter were probably scared. And I was like, you know what? You're right. Like, nobody wants to sleep outside this church at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. They are scared. And so meeting the standard that is First Presbyterian Church, I always do this because like the top of the pyramid is church, right? You have to meet that standard, but figuring out that balance, leaning on partners like DDI and their extensive experience as it relates to the extended sanctuary, that is the increased perimeter since the acquisition of 515, that is Park Avenue. It was really interesting that we actually are now 12 blocks. Like it's 12 blocks if you walk all the way around the church's property holdings, which is pretty significant. And so there are a lot of people that find comfort and peace on our perimeter, and we want to invite them more closely into the community. And that's what the senior leadership team is continuing to look at, and session will receive a little report on it next month.